Hello and welcome to our Saturday stream, Fantasy Grounds Unity map and image creation. I'm Josh and thank you all for joining me today. It's a lovely day here, so hopefully it's nice weather where you guys are. And we're actually going to be streaming from now on multiple platforms. So not only are we on Twitch, but I'll be streaming on simultaneously on YouTube, on our Steam page, as well as on our Facebook page. So thanks all for joining me. This is our Saturday stream, so anyone who hasn't seen it before, what we usually do is go over all of our art-related news. I try to talk about all of our upcoming art packages, things that are in the works, and so on and so forth. And so I'll be talking about, in the beginning here, about our upcoming art releases for this next month coming. We are in May now. We just had our first sci-fi art packages released, one for creating spaceships and one for doing sci-fi interiors, which is super exciting. And next month, we are actually going to be releasing a couple of more along the lines of a utility type art packs. So the GM icons and symbols is going to be coming out. So that is going to be a great one, especially with the Forge up and coming, and with that on the horizon. So this is going to allow you guys to create all of those symbols that or actually implement all of those symbols that you're going to be needing for your GM layers on your maps. So lots of numbers, letters, all of those ones that you kind of specialize in with, like secret doors, concealed doors, and so on and so forth. In addition to that, is all of the different symbols that you might need to doing like hex maps, like a hex crawl. So symbols for towns, entrances to dungeons, tons and tons of stuff in there. So that should be super fun. In addition, we will be releasing, I have a decal art pack that is going to be coming out, which is going to add a whole bunch of different custom decals that you can use in any system game and so on. If you guys don't know how to use the new custom decal mechanic that is built into Unity, I'm certainly happy to demonstrate for you, but this will allow you to kind of take control of the mood and do all kinds of different changes. So great stuff on the horizon there. Also, I have a dark theme that's going to be coming out this next month, which is kind of along the same lines as the modern theme that came out before. It is a very streamlined, modern-looking kind of theme, but in a dark kind of that classic kind of modern dark theme. So that should be super exciting as well. Oh, hey, Spencer. Hey, Hauser. Thanks for joining us on Twitch. Already used some of the interior pieces, colored them, and put them into my D&D campaign. Oh, that's awesome. That's super cool. In fact, what I think that we're going to be creating today is I want to do a crashed spaceship. And so we're going to be using some of the other terrain items, the ones that are probably the 2019 art package. And then I wanted to create like a half sunken in spaceship, maybe in some of the water or something along those lines. We'll see how that kind of pans out here. But yeah, it's very exciting stuff. Yes, the dark theme will work in any rule set. Yep, all of the themes will work across all rule sets. When they first get released, sometimes there is a bug here and there in particular rule sets, but it all gets worked out. So yes, they will be completely rule set independent. You'll be able to use them wherever you wish. So without further ado, let's jump right in here. We'll start to create a new package. And again, if you guys have any questions, sometimes I go a little bit fast. I use a lot of shortcuts. If there is a shortcut key, I oftentimes use it. So if I do something that you guys are unaware of how I did it, and if I move a little bit too quickly for you, just please throw it into chat. Let me know to slow down or to explain what I did, and I'm more than happy to kind of stop. I'll try to keep a much closer eye on the chat so that I can have a little bit. Sometimes I get a little bit invested in what I'm doing. So we'll open up our assets, and once we have our image window open and our assets window open, we can create a new work environment a couple of different ways. We can either drag something over, or we can just right click over in the image window here, and we can create a new item. This is an independent item over here like this, and now I can just close this down, and I'm just going to stretch this out something along these lines. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to change my grid to 100 by 100. You're not going to be able to see the grid at the moment because we have this nice white background in the background. Oh, we got a question over here from Spencer. What's the difference between your dark theme and the dark theme that is already there? Opposite the light theme and the Gothic theme. Well, this dark theme is going to be a little bit more streamlined as far as look and feel. So it'll be, if you have used the modern theme and how that has been kind of implemented, it is a very simple, easy on the eyes kind of theme. Whereas the dark theme, that is opposite of the light theme, that is specifically for Unity. And so this dark theme is going to work across Classic and this one as well. The other dark theme is specifically a Unity only theme. And it's not going to have any of that dedicated kind of background. It's going to be much more streamlined, kind of along those same lines as like a modern kind of sleek environment. So it's not going to have any sort of like fancy graphical elements. That is to say that there isn't going to be any of those images or drapery and whatnot that would be found in the Gothic theme, or any of those kind of more involved kind of picturesque graphics. It's going to be much more clean looking and streamlined. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to go over in here, and I'm actually going to go in. I'm thinking about doing this a couple of different ways. One, we could begin to create our spaceship first, or we could begin to create our environment first. And so we'll probably just do a mix of that. I'm going to go into the 2019 art pack. I'm going to go into my tiles, and I'm just going to pull out a couple of these tiles that I'm going to be using, and we'll pull out this nice blank one. You can see that this is going to change my background here. Now that we have the nice workspace, and now I can come into my grid system here, and now I'm just going to lower down my opacity here a bit, and we'll be adjusting this as we need to as we go along here. And I'm going to pull out a couple of these other ones that we can just kind of place around, and these are all seamless. They just all snap right together. And now we'll grab one of these ones, and then we can just do this and select this and duplicate it. And this will be a good little area for us to begin to work with. I think I'm going to add some water in here. We might make it look a little bit swampy. So this will be like that cool kind of, one of the reasons why I thought about creating this particular image set here for you guys today is that it's a very kind of common, well used and almost cliche interaction with like a spaceship where it's been crashed into the actual landscape itself. So even in Dungeons and Dragons, we have I think it's White Plume Mountain, which there is like this spaceship that's crashed into the mountain itself, and then many other areas. So this is going to work across multiple different genres, and this is going to show that you can use this kind of art package in many ways, and integrating it in with all of these other kind of systems. So now we have our base little land here. I think what we'll do is move back up, and now we'll begin to build our spaceship. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to title this ground. And if I need to add more ground or add in different elements, I'm just going to do it right inside this folder. Oh, Veilthrain said the first thing that he made, or they made in Unity, was a crashed spaceship. Oh yeah, hit it mostly in foliage? Yeah. Oh, very cool. Yeah, each image has its own layer. Yes. That can get a little bit cumbersome after a while. Absolutely. Okay, so why don't we get into our sci-fi? So we're going to go into our spaceships art pack. And then we have some backgrounds here, and this is just like a space background, which is a generic one. Depending on how well the sci-fi art packages do, will allow me to create a lot more in that area. I want to create an entire art pack that is dedicated to just making like spacescapes and planets and all of that sort of thing, which sounds super fun to me. So hopefully we do get to do that in the future. And then we can jump right into our decorations here. And I'm going to go into hull parts, and I'm just going to start to build out my very basic shape. Now I'm going to do this without adding any color information yet. We're going to be adding that in later. And the reason why is because I want to be able to do it unified and pick all of the pieces that I want to have in a sort of a unified color palette. And then I'll be able to manipulate it much easier after the fact rather than trying to do it now. And so I'm just going to build out a very basic kind of spaceship. And you can see that if I were to drag and drop these out, for example, these are all going to be in a pretty decent scale to what we're going to be wanting to do. So we don't have to worry too much about the scale. And if I do decide that I'm going to change this, I'm going to do it as a unified unit. And we can change all of the scale of these items after the fact. So let's see here. Yeah, we could use. What kind of ship do you guys think that we should create? Any sort of suggestions? We could do like an X-wing style ship, like a single person fighter, or we could do a much larger ship, and then later on do some of the interior. But I'm thinking along the lines of a larger ship. So that we could maybe expand this out and do the rest of this on next Saturday. We could do a whole interior kind of art package. Or maybe, depending on how quickly this goes, we might be able to jump into that. A drop ship. So do you mean something along the lines that you would see in like Aliens, for example, like those kind of drop ships that would have like lots of military type things in there, military vehicles and stuff? Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we can totally do something like that. Well, we'll do like a basic ship, and why don't we do it like a classic kind of ship silhouette, and then we can kind of decide what's going to be included into that next time. So we'll figure out the contents next Saturday. Or maybe we'll start today. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to keep this kind of blocky looking. I want it to be kind of rectangular, maybe with some like rounded elements. So I'm going to just grab some of these rectangle kind of pieces first and start to build out my basic shape. And so this is always a really great way to kind of do this. And I'll show you, we'll create a new painting layer. And I'm just going to grab this. Well, we don't want to put it in the tile area. We want to put it in the painting area. Make sure we have our stamp selected. Excuse me. And what we can do is hold down Control, and this is going to snap to our grid, and I can start to build out any of the shapes that I so wish. I'm actually going to drop this down to a 2x2, and so that I can have a little bit more control over the shape and dynamic here. And so in this layer, you can see that I'm just holding down Control. Now I can just start to paint this right out and begin to build out the basic silhouette. Now I have no really preconceived idea about what I'm going to be creating here. So it's just going to be something that is oh, Super Josh. Hey, I like that. Hi, Dirk. So I'm just going to kind of build this as I go. And thinking along the lines of probably I'll be using a lot of that reference material in my head about different ships that I've seen or different things that I would like to create, but I don't really have a conscious kind of idea. So I'm just going to kind of let it flow. So I'm thinking what we'll do is we'll have like this main kind of cargo area, and we can always do this based off of the size in which we want to create it as well, right? So with our squares, we would know pretty much how far something would be across. So if this was in like Dungeons and Dragons kind of terms, each square would be 5 feet. And so that we can easily look at this and know that it is 6 squares across. So that's about 30 feet wide. We're actually going to be creating a spaceship that has crashed into a landscape. So we're going to be building our ship, and then we're going to cover some of it up with some of our foliage and some ground and rocks. We're going to make it look as though it's partly submerged, and I think I want to put some of it in water as well. So we're going to use lots of different elements, lots of different effects layers. We're going to show how you can intermingle these particular elements with some of the other natural kind of nature elements as well. And I think we're just going to, whoop, I don't want to do it there. I want to do it here. So we have this really basic kind of shape that I'm going to be building off of. And so I can come in here and I can begin to grab some of these other elements. I'm going to be painting my ship all on one particular layer, which means that I'm not going to be able to rotate it very easily. But that's quite all right. I'm not really concerned about it. I want it to kind of be in a very static kind of position. All of this is included in the art sub. That's correct. So right now, I believe there is a lot of art products that we have already released. We release usually 3 every single month, 2 art packs and a theme. So there are several themes, and there are lots of art packs already been released. So in my opinion, the art package is certainly worth it. Oh yeah, we can create a nice divot. That's a good idea, Spencer. Yeah, to do like a nice little like gouge in the ground and create all kinds of carnage. Maybe what we could do is use some of the logs and make it look like some trees are knocked down and stuff along those lines as well. Yeah, that sounds super fun. Great. Now let's grab some of these other elements. I'm thinking now that we're starting to create this, let's move into the wings for right now. We'll grab a couple of these wings. I think I'm going to do something like this. And again, I'm going to drop this down a little bit smaller. And I'm going to use this as like some sort of building area to come out. Oh, we could actually use this. Yeah, let's put this in here like this, and then we'll flip it and match it up on the other side here. And just start to, when you're in this kind of area, when you're working in this, and so this is a really great way to work as well. So let's turn off this background, right? And now I'm going to create an effects layer. And this effects layer is going to be a adjust colors. And we're going to turn everything all the way down. And this is not going to really affect the images that we're working on. It's just going to show us the silhouette that we're creating. And this is what we really want to focus on during this particular process, is that nice kind of silhouette. So as we begin to build this out, now we can switch back over to our painting layer. And we don't have to worry about us interfering with this because we're going to be changing this adjust layers after the fact. But this is just going to give us that really good kind of understanding about what we're creating here. Let's make this 2.5. We'll shrink it down to half again. We might even make it down to like 2. And what I'm going to be doing here is just looking at this silhouette. Whoop, I want to make sure I'm in my stamp. And I'm holding down Control, so I'm going to be snapping to the grid system. And then I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to maintain this kind of workflow where I'm going to do something on one side, and I'm going to work on the other. Now, at any time, if I want to check the whole kind of construction element that we're doing here, I just have to jump back and turn off this adjust colors layer. But you can see how well that this is going to help us identify that silhouette without us having to worry too much about the other parts of the creation process. And then I think what we'll do is we'll start to paint some like this. And that's a little bit off there, so we want to make sure that we get this right in the right spot. And we might even want to add in some additional kind of elements coming down. I think what I want, if we go back into our hull parts here, we have some nice beams and whatnot, but we have these kind of cool rectangular pieces. And if we just drop this down to something like along these lines, and I think I might even turn this off. Let's make that 3, or let's make it 2. So we can line it right up along here, and then we might even change this, but I think I want to do like a couple of these pieces that kind of come out. And you can see if we turn this off, we got this nice already added in elements, and I'm going to do a larger kind of area up front here. And so with this element up here, I think what I'll do is we can switch over to our brushes, and I'll grab a couple of these elements. And we want to turn this back on for sure. We want to make sure we have our line selected. And now we'll jump back into our decorations, and I'm going to go back to the hull parts here. And I'm going to use one of these nose pieces, I think. I'm going to use this one. And we can just shrink this down to the appropriate size. And again, we can always turn back on our silhouettes. And you can see that this is going to be, yeah, that's going to work out pretty cool. That's a nice silhouette, I think. And I think what I'll do is add in a couple of little elements on these sides as well. And we'll bring this down to maybe something not quite that small. Let's do something like this. Maybe we do want it that small. Yeah. And I think I'll flip it. And we can drop that like right in here. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good basic shape that we can kind of build up from. And then add in all kinds of different other elements. So if we turn this off now, we can see that we have this nice little ship that we've already begun to create. And we can add in a whole bunch of different elements across here. Basically, this is the framework, the construction by which we will be creating the rest of the ship from. And we can add in now some of these other elements. So if we want to, adding in some of this other kind of stuff, now that all of this is on one painting layer, we can switch over and we can start to color it now if we so wished. We could drop this stuff down. I'm thinking like maybe like a dark army kind of green might be kind of cool. We'll want to maybe do something along these lines, but we'll be able to adjust this after the fact as well. Nope, there's no way to move any of these to the top on the same layer. So you have to be, if you're painting all on one layer, you have to be very careful on how you do it. You can certainly very easily switch back over. So let's say, for example, if I wanted this to be above these other elements, I could just erase this and then switch back over to, oh, I'm in my wings. And then I switch back over to the exact same piece and do it once again. So you can kind of do it. Your eraser is going to be your friend in a lot of different areas. So you can definitely use that to kind of reorganize all the different pieces. It works exceptionally well, but the best bet is to kind of think about what you're creating and build it up from the bottom up. Either that or just add in new layers. We could have created this in a whole bunch of different layers. So now what we can do is I'm going to use some of these other elements to create a little bit more of depth to our ship. And I'm going to do that with some of these other different types of pieces here. So I could do this either, we could paint out a couple of things, but I think what I'm going to do is maybe grab some elements like this, and we'll create a new painting layer for that. We'll just drop that down. We can delete this effects layer now. Now we don't really need it. And I think what I'm going to do is maybe add in a couple of, or maybe this one large kind of pod right in the middle. We could also add in a couple of these like disc shapes. Maybe something like this. And because we're adding this on as a separate layer, we can now really easily adjust these colors separately. I like to mix and match these different types of material. It adds a little bit of extraness, extra flair to it. But I think that we're going to use a little bit flatter kind of elements. And I'm actually going to use this, I think. And the cool thing about this, let me just adjust this so that it is a little bit easier for us to manage here. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn these into raised up pieces. Yeah, it's a surfboard rack. Exactly, yeah. Silver Surfer. It's his spaceship. Is that still a thing, Silver Surfer? Is that like still part of the... And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be building in between these two layers and adding in some different kind of components and whatnot. So I really like these kinds of things for that. So we could come in here, and if we wanted to add in a new layer, and so I'm just going to do this spaceship base, and then we can name these all appropriately as well. Actually, you know what? That kind of looks good just right on top, like layering these on top of each other. Yeah, I like that. And we could even add in all kinds of different elements as well. So why don't we go back up into our decorations? We have all of these mechanical parts. We can start to add these in. This is one of my favorite ones. I really like this. And we can add this in at particular other areas as well. And we can just flip it and move it over here, and boom, something just like this. And you can see we're already starting to give it a lot of extra texture. We'll be using our shadows to really help separate these items as well. And we can add in, we could do some windows and a whole bunch of other things. Let's add in some additional kind of elements here. We can actually start to build out some cool little pieces here. And this is going to be down in underneath there. And let's add in a couple of these other kinds of things as well. Actually, let's put this, you know what, I know which one I want to use here. Do something like this. And I think that we can add in a couple of these little additional kind of pieces. And I think I'll bring it right down. I think that that is right along these edges. And we can turn our ground back on. Now that we're not too concerned about our silhouette anymore. And we can add in some tanks. Let's use this one. Symmetry is kind of key here at the moment. But certainly don't feel like that you have to maintain any sort of particular types of symmetry in any way. And feel free to like mix and match these, figure out what's going to work best for you. Let's flip this one vertically. And begin to build out some of these other machine mechanisms that we might be using here. And I think that we can actually, let's flip this one. And I think I'm going to use this as my like propulsion kind of systems here. I'm going to make a, yeah, let's keep this one on this layer. And then we can build up from there. We can actually add in some, let's go into the propulsion systems and add in some of these other elements as well. And we have, if we go back into our wings, we can scoot on over. We have some nice wing attachments if we want to. And we can go into our armaments. Maybe we'll grab something along these lines. And I think what we'll do is we'll create a new layer, and we're going to drop this down in underneath. I want these to kind of be under. And we'll drop in a couple of missiles as well. Very cool, super cool. We are moving right along here with our spaceship. And then we're going to be destroying it here in a minute. So now what we're going to do, I think we'll do all of our colors. We'll figure out our colors, and then we'll move on to, and we'll just call this armaments. And then we'll begin to do all of our shadow content, which will be adjusted later with the way that we've crashed this ship into the surroundings. So let's figure out our base colors first. So we can jump in here and open up our tint. One of the things that we can also do is grab our color picker, and we can always grab a color like over here, and that's going to give us a really nice kind of, without a whole lot of effort, a really nice kind of army green, and then we can adjust it with it whatever way we wish. But I think that's a pretty good base start for us. And we can then add in all of our highlights and shadows. And so we just hit OK. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to this area, and we're going to do something similar, but we want it to be a little bit different. So maybe we could grab this again, a little bit darker version of it. It's looking pretty militaristic, I think. We can hit OK. And then we have this particular layer as well. And I think we're going to go this one a little bit different. Maybe we'll bring this one into like the blues in the blue area. But we don't want it to be too overpowering in our colors. So let's bring this quite down. And I'm not worried too much about it being too dark right now, because I'm going to add in my own highlights and whatnot. But maybe something along these lines. And this is going to really help us sell a lot of the metallic kind of structure of it, because we'll be able to add in some really bright kind of highlights. And then we can go to our armaments. And if I wish, right, I could come back up into here. Let's grab this color before we lose it here. Hit Control C here. And then I can come into my armaments and hit Control V to paste that. So we just have a pretty unified kind of palette. I think I'm actually going to come up here and make this a little bit lighter. So we can just bring in a little bit more of each of these. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to add in all of the different shadows and whatnot. And so there's a couple of ways that we could do that. You know, we can use a adjust colors layer. Right now I'm going to create a new folder, and we'll call this Spaceship. And then I'm just going to grab all of these and just drop them right in there. I think what we'll do today is actually paint out oh yes, yeah, that's very true. Yeah. So Dark Mist said one thing that they do is to keep a note all of the different colors that are used per item, so it's easier to go back and adjust them or to recreate that item, which is a really good. I will oftentimes keep a text document open and copy and paste in particular elements, especially if I find something that I want to use over and over again. So I think that what we'll do is use a combination. We'll do all of our highlights, and we'll do that first with an effects layer. So we'll create an effects layer, and we're going to go down to adjust colors. And I'm just going to up the brightness of this for right now, and we're going to add a mask. And we can adjust our blur as we so wish. But once we've added a mask, we can go down and hold down Alt, and we begin to create our little highlights. And so let's just blur that all the way out there. And so I can begin to do this. This is a little bit too much for me at first. I'll be adding in some more specular kind of highlights as we go. But this is just going to be able to create these little areas in here. Now, if I hold down Shift, I can take away. So this is a really good way for me to, without being destructive in any way, add in some of these different kind of elements. Now, if I don't hold down Alt, it'll do it in a square, which is going to be really good for us when we're in particular areas like this. And we want to do these kind of like blanket base kind of areas in here. But I want to do it along this edge here. And then I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm just going to take away some of this, make this a little bit crisper over here. And we don't have to spend too much time doing this kind of stuff, but I find this to be super fun. And we can just kind of create some nice little highlights along the edge here. We could do this if you want to have crisper kind of edges and some blurred out edges. You can just create two particular types of effects layers, one with a crisper edge and one with a not as crisp edge. And this is just my base for creating more highlights later. So it's just going to be something that we can kind of look at and use as our kind of guiding. And we can do some along here. And I think I'll do some along the top edges too. Now you can do your shadows exactly the same way, but I think we're going to paint them out today. And you can see that this is just going to give us a nice little subtle kind of highlights on everything. It's just going to help us define its form here. And some really basic kind of shapes. And now let's go in and we'll create a new painting layer. And we'll call this one Ship Shadows. It's always a really good idea to name all of your layers as you progress, because I oftentimes don't. I just get ahead of myself and then I can't remember where I painted something or where I added something. Oh, how would you crack a window? Oh, we could totally do that. Yeah, I'll add in some windows so that we can crack some windows. That sounds fun. There's a bunch of different ways that we could do it, but I'll show you how I would go about it. And now let's go all the way up into our 2019, not the art package, but the module pack. If you don't have this yet, I'll grab this one actually. If you don't have this art package, not an art package, but there's a module exchange on the forums. And included in those is these nice little shadow brushes that I created. So if you download that, you will get those for free. And I'm going to keep these shadows quite neutral. I'm going to drop down my red and green all the way down to 0, and then blue just down to 50. And then I'm going to drop down my opacity to 25. And this is going to be very subtle. You see this? And I'm also going to keep my aspect lock ratio off. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it a little bit larger and make sure that I'm in my stamp mode. And I'm just going to start stamping this around. And this is going to help me start to create my shadows here. I'm actually going to drop this down to 25. And the reason why that I keep my aspect lock ratio off, and what I'm doing is I'm just moving along and just clicking with my stamp tool. I can also change these parameters as well. As you can see here, I make it long and elongated. And then I can quickly kind of go along some of these edges. And I'm just building up layers of this by clicking. And you can see we can create some pretty natural kind of shadows. And if I decide that this is not exactly dark enough, I can go back in and adjust this later. So anyone who is watching who is unfamiliar with Fantasy Grounds Unity, there's several ways that we can adjust the colors and darknesses and whatnot on everything. And we can do it with effects layers. We can do it with our folder itself. We can do it with the individual layer or with the individual item. And you can see what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start to give this a little bit more shape. This is how we start to define our shape. You see this little bit of a highlight and this little bit of a shadow. That's going to take that flat square, that rectangle, and it's going to start to give it some depth. It's going to give it a little bit of height. That's what your eye picks up on. Your eye is going to look at these areas, and if it sees that there's a shadow on one side where it's appropriate and a highlight on the other side, your eye is instantly going to see that, and your brain will interpret that as being something that has height to it. And now I'm actually going to go right along this edge, and I'm going to make this a bit bigger. And you can see that this is going to help separate this from the ship, and we're going to do it along the bottom as well. So I'm just going to rotate it here, and I'm just going to go right across here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this back to its regular ratio. And I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to fill in this little area in here with just as much shadow. I should probably, let's erase some of that and switch back to my stamp here. And I want to close in here a little bit, and I don't want to interfere with my highlight there. But I actually do want to have it spill out along these edges. So I could switch this back and maybe make it oblong once again. I'm just going to be very careful along this edge over here. Now, anyone who is watching that doesn't necessarily know, you can change your rotation on the fly if you hold down Shift with your mouse wheel. You can also change the size of the image with Control and your mouse wheel. And that is only with painting tools. And we can move right along here. And I'm going to start to add in my shadows here. And these little cast shadows coming off of here. I think I'm just going to kind of obscure this all a little bit here. So you can see we get a lot of like shadow content. I think that these shadows are not quite dark enough. So I'm going to switch back over here, and then I can start to darken them up with adjusting my layers colors as well, as you can see here. And I could even, in this particular instance, this is a really good thing that I could show you, is we could change its opacity as well after the fact. So maybe we'll bring it down to something around 100. And that is a little bit better there. A little bit more natural looking. And now I don't have to change the color of this whatsoever because it's going to mingle that with that other adjustment that we just did. So everything that I do in here now is going to match up perfectly. I'm just going to do some additional kind of, we're going to make sure that we have our stamp tool selected and do a little bit here and maybe just along that edge there. I think I'll rotate it and do right along the bottom here. Get some nice kind of cast shadows coming off of there. And we'll do a little bit in around these areas. So I hope everyone's having a great week. I'm so excited for warm weather. So yeah, we're really starting to bring this into fruition now. I really feel like that this is starting to take some shape. And you can see the drastic kind of differences you can do just with a little bit of shadow content. So now we have this nice raised little section over here. So we're going to mimic that on this side by making this feel like that it's sunken down in. And we'll have to add in a little bit of highlight along that edge right there. Oh yes, I want to create. Oh yeah, you can do dented metal and all kinds of different things. Yeah, yeah, for sure. We could add in scratches and all kinds of stuff. So yes, I would love to do art packages that are specifically for like alien worlds and all kinds of stuff. But you can use a lot of the like underwater art pack and so on and so forth to kind of circumvent that for the time being. Also, the Abyss art pack is great for that as well. So you can see just by adding in these little shadows here, look at the depth that we're starting to give the ship. It's got so much more shape now. We'll add in a little bit along this ridge. Super cool. I think that's plenty for now. Now what I'm actually going to do is do a little bit more of the specular highlights. And I'm going to switch over to here and go into my effects layer. And I'm actually going to just add in, let me make sure that I have a reveal area. And we can add in some highlight right along that edge. And I'm going to do some right along here. So basically wherever there is a shadow on this side, we want to have a highlight on this side. Hauser only has a meh week? That's not good. Hopefully your weekend will improve. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over. I'm going to use this exact same brush, except I'm going to change this to be nice bright white. And I'm just going to drop down my opacity a little bit. And this is what I'm going to use to create my little additional kind of highlights here. And we'll create a new layer. We can call this ship. I'm just going to call it H lights. And again, with our stamp tool selected, we can just kind of stamp in a couple of these in through here like this. And if I want to build this up more, right, I can do some more like right in the center. Get some nice kind of specular highlights. Works exceptionally well. And we can do the same thing right along here. Now, if I don't want to go all the way along this, all I have to do is adjust my, I guess this is set up so that the height is this way, yeah. So maybe I'm going to make this like 2, or maybe even 3. And now I can do a nice little highlight along there and one along here. And we can add in some additional kind of ones along here. And I'll rotate it and put it up here. And we can even rotate it along these axes. And you might not be able to get it exact, but it doesn't need to be, just close enough. And we can move right over here and we can do similar kind of things. And I'm just going to do a couple more of these just so that we don't get too bogged down. I could sit and do this all day long. This kind of stuff is super fun for me. Let's move this back down to like 1, so it's a little bit wider. And then we'll do a nice one along here. And I think we'll do one right along this edge right there. And we'll drop one here. Well, those are a little bit kind of awkward. I actually am going to change this back to its original kind of shape here. And we'll drop down its opacity. I'm going to build these ones up a little bit more. Even though I'm going to layer a window on top of here, I want this to be a little bit more shapely. And I'll just kind of just go along this edge. Awesome. Very cool. We have a nice ship going here. And it didn't take us very long at all. So we can get into adding in a whole bunch of different other elements here. So the next thing that we're going to do is add in our window. And I'm going to show you guys how you can make any sort of breaks or whatever you want to do. So let's go back into our Spaceship art package. In our decorations, we have some windows here. So I'm just going to grab something that's pretty simple. We'll just grab something like this, right? And I'm going to actually add this in underneath some of these, I think. So maybe we'll just stamp it like right here. And that's going to make us a new layer. And we can drop it in underneath all of our shadows and even our adjust colors if we want to. So we get that nice kind of adjustment in there. Now I'm going to do this all on this one particular layer. And I'm actually going to, well, let's see. Actually, you know what? Let's undo this. I'm going to adjust my my color here a little bit first. I want something that's going to be a little bit more neutral here, and I don't want it to be adjusted in the layer itself because you'll see why in a moment. And so I'm just going to stamp that right in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch over to my regular painting area here. And what I can do is I can just use my color picker and select any color that I want. So maybe something along these lines. So you can see that this is going to match up with this color exactly. So if I want to use this color, for example, and bend this out, break up some of these areas and through here, this is a really good technique for lots of different stuff. So we could do this. And I can actually add in I can draw in my own cracks here, just like this. So if I wanted to, I could begin to, and if I wanted to make it like black cracks as well, I could just match these colors, make sure that my line is small enough, and then I can just start to draw in whatever elements that I wish. So feel free to use all of the different tools. Another great thing that we could do is we could go back up into the winter art package. So if we go over to our winter map pack, inside of here we'll find all of these cracks for ice cracks. That indeed would leak the air. Yeah, we're going to actually do a crashed spaceship. So we want it to look like pretty broken and beat up. So we could grab something like this as well. And again, we'll want to darken this up. And we might even want to drop down our opacity. Make sure we have our stamp selected. And we could even use this on the ship itself if we wanted to do like some sort of scoring or whatnot. And I'll show you guys how you can use some of these textures to actually create some different kind of elements here. So maybe we're going to do a couple of cracks there. And this is a really good example of how you can use all of these different tools, right? Like all of the different elements. Let's undo that. Let's actually change the dynamic of this a bit, right? So we can really make it kind of feel like it is stretched across there and the whole window is cracked. So we could actually use some of these as well and lower them down if we wanted to actually add in some ship textures. So if we wanted to make this, and what I would do is select maybe something like this. And we could even make it a little bit darker if we want to do, but we're going to drop down its opacity. And so now maybe we want to make it even a little bit like red, for example. So let's make a new layer. We'll call this ship texture. And then with our stamp tool selected, we can just start to add this around. Layer this right over the top. Sure, yeah, you can do rust patterns. We can do all kinds of different stuff. If I want to make this more like the ground, all I have to do is select the ground color and begin to paint it. So I think that as we begin to do these, you guys are really going to see like the power that is in the image creation system inside of FG. And so we can start to build this kind of stuff around, and it's going to start to look, we'll put some over the window as well. Actually, I'm going to drop down the opacity a little bit more so we can kind of build this up. Make it look like it's not so pristine. There's got to be a reason why it crashed, right? Excellent. So we got a nice little bit of color variations in here. We've built a really cool kind of drop ship, right? Who knows what's in the contents? We'll have to create all of that stuff as well. And we have basically set it onto this background. So in our next step here, we're going to start to make it feel like that it's crashed into the ground itself. So what I'm going to do is I can actually use this exact same thing, and I'm going to grab my color picker and maybe just grab in something like this, as you can see here. So now what I can do is start to build up, if I wanted to, with this particular brush, any area that I want it to look like it's sunken in the ground. And then we're going to really finish selling it by adding in our cast shadows from the actual ship itself onto the surrounding areas and really start to blend it in. And then we'll unify everything in a color way with probably like a time of day filter or something. So I'm just going to grab all of these others because this is all related. Let's just put in the windows. All related to the ship. I'm just going to grab them all and just drop them right down into the spaceship here. I am. I swear to you I am. We want to make sure that it's in here. Let's drop it down. I think sometimes this gets a little bit glitchy and you got to do it something like that. Perfect. So that's all of our spaceship stuff all put in there. So that way if we have to, we can grab all of this and whoop. Let's put all of this stuff back. These were the ones that were selected on the inside now. But we can hit Control Z, I believe, and get it back to where it was. Perhaps not. But that's okay. We're going to just grab these and I'm going to hold down Control and move these back to where they were. So now if we want to, we can, with this selected, we could move all of this, but it seems like that, oh yeah, that's our filter, right? That's our effects layer. Our effects layer will not move. So we want to make sure that we oh, something bizarre just happened when I hit Control Z. Let's see if we can fix that by closing that down and reopening it. Interesting. Not exactly sure what just happened there, but it looks like a couple of the layers got deleted that we had just created. Interesting. Well, that's okay. We can do that up really quickly again. I will just jump through this very quickly so that we can kind of move on here. Let's get into creating our shadows and whatnot really fast once again. I'm not going to go through all of the steps, but we'll do some kind of generalized kind of stuff really quick. And I'm just going to do a little bit more generalized kind of shadows this time so that we can kind of move on. It seems that for some reason when I had a particular aspect selected and I hit Control Z, that it kind of reverted back to quite a long time ago. It should be noted as well that I'm still in the test channel, so that some of this is going to be a little bit less stable than in live. And let's just change that parameter here a little bit. Go along the sides of these tanks. And move all the way up here. We'll do some of there. Add a little bit on the side of this. Drop a little bit in there. We'll do a little bit more of these kind of cast shadows along the side here. It's in the 2019 module pack, and I can get you after I take usually a break around 4:30. When I come back, I'll give you a link to where it is located. In the forums, there's a module exchange, and in there is access to a whole bunch. What I do is all of these things that I create on the stream, I eventually get to putting them on the forum so that you guys can download them. As long as you have the art packages, you can just load up the module and have all of these different maps and whatnot that we create here. There's a whole bunch of them on there, and then there's a whole bunch that are created. Oh, look, it went all the way back to when this was below the other ones, which is very interesting. And we'll just drop this down here, do a little shadow in here really quick, and along this edge. And I won't do an effects layer this time. I'm just going to do the exact same thing, but we'll increase this up. And I'll just do some shadows, some highlights along here. I'm going to do this all in one layer this time. And just do a little bit of highlights. I'm not going to do it to the extent that I did it before. And I can see that this layer should be below this one. And we'll just do along here. It should also be noted that there are a lot of shadow brushes and whatnot that are included in many of the art packages. And now I'm going to make this much more round again, and I'm just going to do some nice shadows along here. Or highlights rather. And some large kind of generalized ones. And we got to do some on these, make them a little bit more shiny. There, yeah. Not quite to the same polish level as it was before, but close enough. This will work for us fine. And I might just come in here and just drop down the opacity of it just a little bit. Great. Now we can add in some additional kind of content later, which is fine. Yes, the module, not the actual art package. Okay, so now let's begin to add in all of these different elements. We're gonna. I'm not gonna add in the window again just for time. It's unfortunate that that happened, but such is life, right? And we'll start to create some of these different elements. So I'm going to go back up into the 2019 art pack, and we'll go into our decorations here. I'm going to add in a couple of well, I should probably include this down in here so it's all together. And I'm going to actually, let's see here, we'll do a couple of trees, I think, out and about. So I'll just grab one of these and, well, actually, we want to put it in here. We'll just grab a little tree grouping, maybe put it over here to the side. Make sure we have our stamp tool selected. And maybe something like this. And we'll drop it over here. Just to give us a little bit of scale and reference. And now what we'll do is kind of build up kind of these areas in here. I think what I'll actually do is move this out a little bit so that we have a little bit more freedom to create, really show this as it's kind of like driven through the area and broken up in there. At the beginning of this art pack in the decorations area, we have a nice little brush that will match up the texture of our ground pretty well. And I'm going to drop down this opacity to something around, let's do 100. And then I'm going to switch back over into the that snow brush, that snow image, and we'll add in some additional kind of cool stuff along there as well. So let's just call this one trees. That was weird. Seems that there are some strange things afoot today. It looks like a few of our images got deleted there. From our base. Oh, let's add those back in really quickly. Go back into our spaceships art package, and we'll just add in some of these additional kind of elements. Go into our decorations and hull parts. We will grab, because we did this on a layer base, and we know that this was 2x2 when we were creating it, we can make sure we go into here and we can just kind of paint these out. It's going to match up in our color exactly. It seems that this is a little bit off. Move this back to its original location here. And then we can come back in here. Things are disappearing. It's crazy. But we shall persevere. And now let's go into our wings. Let's see here. I wonder if things are disappearing or if they're just getting covered up. There does seem to be a ground element that's missing, but it's still visible. Oh yeah, look, it just came back. How very curious. I'll have to make some notes of some of this stuff. Now let's see if we can get in here and remove some of these other elements that we just added. Well, I think that's good enough for now. It seems that there is some additional elements that are missing, like these armaments and whatnot, but we'll just cover it up. And so let's go back into our, well, we don't want to go to portraits. We want to go to our 2019 art package. And we're going to start to build up some of these elements along here. I'm going to go back into my decorations and grab this guy. I'm going to drop down my opacity to something around like 25. A little bit more than that. Let's go 50. We'll find a decent size for us, and then we want to, let's do like this whole section over here will be covered up. Actually, you know what? Let's go all the way up to like 150 to get this going a little bit faster here. And you know what? We could actually probably bring this all the way up, and we can actually create a hard edge or a harder edge with which we're going to kind of build. And what we're doing here is you can see, is we're just kind of covering up, and we're going to rotate this and break up some of this pattern that we've created here. And now what I can do is drop down my opacity to like 50. And then I can come in here and start to fade off some of this stuff. Because we have this separated into particular layers, I'm going to be able to jump in underneath and create shadows cast from this. One thing that I could possibly do is duplicate the entire thing, drop it down underneath here, switch over to my layers tab, and drop this down all the way to black, and with a shadow of maybe like 50. And then I can kind of move this out, as you can see, and create a reasonable facsimile of a drop shadow of my ship. And if I want to, I could, let's see here. Maybe just drop down the opacity a little bit less, or more, or less. Maybe like 100. You can see we have created a nice little drop shadow, and I can just hold down Control and move this around to wherever I wish. And we might even want to add in some additional shadows in there. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a much more generalized kind of shadow. So let's delete this. And I wonder if, because there's this strange thing out here, which I can't seem to interact with. I wonder if I delete my ground. As you can see, there it is. It's like there. I think what I'll do is I'll take these out of that folder, and then let's delete this folder. And that didn't seem to fix it either. I guess we can just move it. Oh, and there it is. Back to normal, everyone. Make sure we put our trees back up here. And now we can grab some tiles in here and do this one more time here. And we'll let's grab this one. And drop that down right underneath. Great. Now I'm going to create a folder for those. And we'll drop them right in there. Perfect. So now from here on, I'm going to just be adding in some additional kind of elements. Let's go into some of our rocks. So if we come up out of our tiles and we go into our decorations, we can just type in rock. We got a whole bunch of different ones here. Oh, I want to put it over in here. So while we're creating this, right, what we've actually done, we want to give the impression that there is like this embankment, that it's like driven through the ground. Some of it has gotten buried. We're going to create some massive scars in the ground itself, and do a whole bunch of different stuff. So we're going to be creating like a little bit of a ledge up here. I actually think probably the best way to do this is using the winter map pack. We have some nice brushes that might help with us doing this. We'll experiment a little bit. One is we have this nice brush. And if we match its color to something along these lines, let's find some of these brighter areas. So it helps a lot. Let's cancel that. If you zoom in when you're doing this so that you can actually see exactly where you're picking, and hit OK. Now with this selected, let's create a new painting layer. And with this particular layer, as you can see, we can start to paint out these kinds of things. And I'm actually going to turn this off and change my width a little bit narrower. Now this is the end of this is going to be a little bit, it's going to be actually like a cutoff like it is here. So we're going to have to build up a little bit around there. And we can do this a couple of different ways, right? We have this painting layer, which we're working on now. We're going to drop it down underneath our trees. But this one has all of this stuff. So we can actually drop it down in underneath here and kind of come out from underneath it, right? And we can bring this down and around. And then we can do something similar above it to kind of build that up. And we can do this in a couple of different layers, right? Like, so we can come out and do another one. And the way that I would do this, I'm going to hit escape to end that and hit Control Z to bring that back, is I'll bring down my opacity of this to like 50. And then this one is going to be much less. So I'm instantly starting to create this feeling like there is like this push up of ground here. And then I can drop down my opacity again to maybe something like 75, and I'll make it bigger. And this is going to give us that nice tiered kind of effect of the ground being pushed up. When we add additional shadow content to this, it'll help sell it a little bit more. And now we can go back, and if we wanted to do something similar on this side and bring it up, and we can do it more along all of these, right? Like we could create lots of like ridges of this. And we could also come in, and if we wanted to increase our opacity again, we can use this to start to create our trenches. I'm going to actually do a new painting layer. Let's call this ridges over, and then we'll make a new one. And we'll bring this down underneath our spaceship. And again, if we wanted to make this a little bit less, right, we could bring this down to like 75 again, make 75. Oh, I gotta 75. Oh, not 750. And I will do this larger and on the outside here to give it a little bit extra oomph here. And now we can jump back over. Let's go up into our, let's go to our 2019 art package. And in our decorations, we'll grab this guy. And let's drop this down. Make sure we have our stamp tool selected. And I'm just going to fade out. I want all of this grass area. Like, increase this a bit. Let's go to like 150. And then I'll drop it back down to like 75. And maybe back down to 25. And we can fade this off. And just to give it like that feeling that all of the grass and plants and whatnot have all been broken up. And yeah, awesome. Really starting to come along there. And then we'll finish up really selling this at the end here. So great. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out with me. I'm going to take a very short break. I'm going to grab a glass of water and I will be right back. And we're going to finish up this map and hopefully maybe even dive into doing some of the interior. But we're definitely going to make this look like it is crashed into the ground. I want to do some rocks, and we want to do some rocks piled up in the debris as it's pushed through. A lot of things exposed. We're going to add in some nice shadows to the ground and make it really feel like that it's sunken down in there. So stay tuned, guys. I'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back. Thanks for everybody for hanging out. I appreciate everybody hanging with me this afternoon. I really enjoy it, and we will be continuing on here, finishing up this art creation. We got a question from YouTube. The theme is the industrial theme. It came out last month. If you have the um, art subscription, it is included in that. Otherwise, it's also purchasable on Steam and the store. And right before we get going a little bit further here, I'm going to grab that link for you guys from the forums. So in the module exchange, I believe it's actually in the armory under the maps. And in here, you guys can, there's a whole bunch of ones that are created by all of the community and as well as by me. The first one is the FG 2019 module, and so you guys are more than welcome to download that. And inside of there, you will find these shadow brushes that I use quite often. And there it is. And so let's continue on here. I'm going to start to build up some of these other layers and work on some of these other kind of characteristics. First thing I'm going to do, I was going to do some rocks first, but I think what I'll do is actually grab some like darker ground. I want to do like these darker kind of areas down in through here and kind of build this up. So that down here we have like this deeper kind of dark earth that gets plowed up from underneath. And so make sure that we have a pretty low opacity. I don't want it to get too overpowering as we begin here. And again, I'm just going to kind of click along and build this up underneath here. And I'm going to actually drop down my opacity to like 25, just to kind of like smooth it out on some of this. And I'm going to go right in underneath these things that these ridges that we created. And that's going to help kind of create a divide. We can even add in some like smoke and whatnot coming off of the crash scene here. And we just kind of build this up. In this same kind of vein, we're going to be creating our shadows and doing all of that stuff. But let's add in a couple of these smaller kind of rocks and whatnot. And we could even add in some more like texture-y kind of stuff if we wanted to. And then this is a great one for that. I'll just zoom it in here. It's got a whole bunch of different rocks and broken up material. So again, we can drop this down to something like 150. And I'll just kind of stamp this around in through here. And if I wanted to allow some of this ridge, I can come up to my ridges. I can switch back over to my layers tab, and I can drop down the opacity of these ridges so that they're not quite, so they allow some of that color change to come through. And I could do it with the other ones as well if I wanted to. This is one of the advantages of being able to control a lot of these colors and opacities right from the layers tab, right? So it's going to affect everything that we painted onto that layer, which is a great kind of thing. And then we can jump over to some of these rocks. Now we're just going to, I can just type in rock up here, and that's going to pull up all of the rocks that are, and so when you do your searches, it's going to be dependent on what you have already selected. So if I am in the decorations and I type in rock, it's going to just go through those particular rocks that are in the decorations of that, wherever I'm actually at. If I type this in and I am all the way up top, it's going to look through every art package that I have. So that can be pretty tricky. But I'm just going to grab some of these rocks. Let's do some of these rounded kind of stones. Let's make sure that we're in our painting tab. And I'm going to do this right in the same area that we did there. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just kind of place these around. And I'm going to do a few. Actually, let's create a new painting layer and drop this down underneath our trees. And I'm going to do a few, and then I'm going to duplicate it to kind of move things up here a little bit. Make sure we're in our stamp. And these are, I want these to kind of feel like that these are rocks that get pushed up out of the ground. And I'm going to actually change some of these so that we can get some stranger kind of shapes and whatnot. So this is something that you guys should always think about when you're doing this, is that you can take one particular image, especially for like image continuity, and greatly kind of distort it. As you can see like this. But so this is going to really allow you to do all kinds of different stuff with it, right? Like this, you would never know that this was the same rock. So make sure that you always are kind of conscientious of this kind of stuff. And see, just by stretching it the other direction, you can see that it's vastly different than the original one. So we can do lots of like these different rock shapes. And let's just type in here rocks. And then let's duplicate this. So I'm just going to duplicate that layer. And then I'm going to switch over, and now I can just move these around. So once I've created a nice little grouping of rocks, I can now do several. And now I can move these, I can rotate it. So it should be noted that if you stamp, when you rotate, the orientation will always stay the same. It's just its rotation changes, so its location, which is great. And I can expand this out or contract it together to make like a little pile here. So I could duplicate that, for example, and I could flip it. We might even want to do some that are piled up on here. And then I can, let's go back there, and I can expand this out. And I can even come in my painting tools, and if there's a little bit too much repetition, I can erase some and do all kinds of stuff. And so now that I have all of these different rocks, I can make a new folder, and we can call this rocks. And then I can drop all of these in here. And the order doesn't really matter. But I can now duplicate all of these at the same time, place these wherever I'd like, probably, place these here, and all of the duplication that I do is going to remain inside of here. So if I duplicate this again, and we switch back over to my layers tab, these are all going to stay inside of there. And again, I can manipulate these as a unit. And I think what I'll do is I'll just drag them down and begin to separate these out here a little bit. And move these around. And this will be a huge time saver for you once you get kind of a good idea on how this system kind of works. Because you can make very complex areas super fast, and then duplicate them to greatly enhance the speed at which this stuff kind of comes together. And now with all of these kind of done in through here, right? Once we add in our shadows and whatnot, I think what we'll do is probably move this one over maybe inside here. Or maybe even a combination of them. Spread it out a little bit. Like lots of these rocks get pulled up and whatnot. We could even do like a lot of foliage and have it get darker as like scorched earth as it moves closer. But before we get too much further, let's create a new painting layer. We're going to add in some shadows both above. So we're going to do this shadows above. And then we'll do another painting layer, and this is going to be shadows below. Whoop. Let's try and spell it correctly. And then we'll drop this down in underneath everything, right? We want this to be, well, above the ridges, but beneath the armaments. And then this one can stay exactly where it is. And if we come all the way up to the top here, we go into our module pack here. And let's make sure we're in our painting layer. Grab something like this. And we're just going to zero out a lot of this and make it quite dark. And bring down our opacity down to 25. And now with our stamp selected, we can start to add in some shadows to these rocks and also to the ridges. And this is where we're going to start to unify some of these shadows from one to the next. So we can start to add in some of the cast shadows from the ship, and we can zoom out and we can do these nice large ones, right? Half buried in the earth. And we can kind of zoom in here and add in some of this other shadow. And maybe even down and along some of these ridges. And for simplicity's sake, I'm going to make it quite a bit longer, this oblong shape, just so I can kind of create these lines of shadows quite quickly. And kind of accentuate these ridges that we made. We can go right along here. Nice. Yeah, we're starting to really get this together here. Now I'm going to go down to my shadows below. Let's make this much more round again. And I'm just going to do these kind of ambient shadows coming out from the bottom. And so this is kind of where our ambient occlusion kind of comes from. And I think what I'll actually do is probably come into my layers tab and just drop down the blue of that a bit. Make it as dark as we can. Have it kind of like poking out from wherever we can. And just click along in through here and just do like a basic kind of shape coming from the ship itself. And you can see that this is going to start to give us that that feeling that this is kind of raised up off of the ground in parts. And then it's going to help us sell the fact that this is sunken down into the dirt on the other side. Your eye is going to be able to see where there is that depth. And I'm just going to kind of go along these edges and through here. Yeah, it's really starting to come together now. It's really starting to look like this crash ship, right? We could even add in some fires, and I think we'll do like some smoke coming off of it. And maybe some other bits of debris and whatnot. And now I think I'm going to go back into my above ground here. And I think I'll do the same thing. Let's adjust these colors. Let's zero out the green and the red, and maybe just make it a little bit darker. But maybe we'll, yeah, I think that looks pretty good still. And if we wished, we could actually enhance this a bit. Let's add another effects layer here at the top. And we can add in anyone who's watching who hasn't seen this before. You can do a lot of your shadow content right from here, as well as highlights. So if we wanted to adjust our colors here, maybe drop down the brightness, we can add a mask, and then we can begin to like draw out these like shadowy areas. That's a little bit too much. But as you can see, we can actually begin to manipulate a lot of this stuff, enhancing these shadows. And we can adjust this. I mean, even if it was just down to like 49, you can see when we turn this off, there is a nice little subtle difference in through here. And we can even do another one. We did one in the beginning that we lost, and we'll add another one for some of our specular highlights. And we should probably actually go in and add in some real shadows for our stones to make them really feel like that they're there, and also for our trees as well. Oh, thanks, Fission Chips. Fission Chips. So we can add a new effects layer, and we'll do exactly the same kind of thing. We'll go into adjust colors. We'll increase it, add a mask, and then we can change our blur, but basically what you want to do is create these little areas where you want these nice specular highlights. And then you can adjust the amount or the shape of them. We could do some in here, for example. And these are great. I actually use this quite a lot uh, for many different aspects. Like if you were doing like windows, for example, and you wanted to have light coming in from a window, you can do something like this really easily to get like that kind of light effect that's coming down in from the window, and then you can just adjust it whatever brightness you want and colors and so on and so forth. So it actually works exceptionally well for many different tasks. And I think what I'll do is just kind of, add in some a little additional, and using these nice little rectangles along some of these works really well for adding in a lot of this additional kind of stuff. You can also adjust the blur amount. So if you want it to be a little bit more crisp or more faded, you can do one right along the edge of this here too. Nice. I think what I'm going to do is switch back over and just add in, let's go back to this shadows above, and I'm just going to add in some nice little shadows, make sure that I have my stamp tool selected. And I think what we'll do is just zero this out so it's quite dark. And I think what we'll do is let's increase this to like 50. And I'm just going to do some shadows coming off these rocks. You can see when we zoom back out, we get some nice, that really nice feeling that these rocks are casting a shadow. They have actual weight to them, that they are on the surface here. And you don't have to be too precise about any of this, and it certainly wouldn't, it's not super necessary. And we can just go along here and do this. I oftentimes really enjoy it when the map kind of spills out from its like very rigid boundary. It feels a little bit more like a painting to me. And now the rest that we can do, we can just kind of do a whole bunch of different fluff kind of stuff here. If we go back into our 2019 art pack, I believe in our decorations we have some logs and things. We can make it look like that some trees were broken. Along these lines. So you could add in a whole bunch of different debris. We could even paint in some additional kind of tree elements. We could go back up into our trees. And if we wanted to, we can add in a few others around. Maybe that are going to overlap here a little bit. And don't forget, you can always come in and adjust your colors a little bit for some variety, as well as change some of these dynamics here. So different shapes and whatnot. Oh yeah, I totally agree. Fish and chips. It's the little shadows and highlights that really do add a whole lot to them. And I think what we'll do is where our trees are up here and we have our shadows down here, we can easily go in and change and do some nice shadows coming off of our trees as well. I think while we're at it, why don't we redo our window and then add in some more texture over our spaceship as well. So we can go into our decorations and go into our windows, grab our window here. We'll put it into this layer. And I am going to adjust it. Perfect. That's a nice little window there. We could add in some additional windows as well, if we so wished. Let's actually add in, well, let me grab this tint first. Hit Control C and hit OK. Maybe we'll do this rounded one, and then we can use that hexadecimal code to match up perfectly. And maybe we'll put this right on top here. And then we could come back in and do some more highlights on that and do some cool like specular kind of stuff. So if we go back into our effects area over here, make sure we have reveal area, and then can add some nice little highlights. Super cool. Let's go all the way up, and I'm going to go into the map module here and go back into our painting area. Well, let's grab this one. And we're just going to zero all this out. Bring this down to something like 75, just so that we can do this a little bit faster, and we'll do our shadows here. Make sure we have our stamp tool selected, and I'm just going to paint out some shadows coming off of our trees here. Super cool. Oh yeah, radar dishes. Well, there's going to be hopefully more stuff coming out in the future. But you know what? I bet we could create our own radar dish right now. Let's try it. That's true, Dark Mantle, because this is something that's gotten fixed in the test channel. I'm in the test channel right now. I've been working primarily in the test channel for a while now, working with the lighting systems and getting everything up to snuff there from my end. So that is going to be fixed as soon as this gets released. So in the live version, there is currently a bug that when you flip it, it will revert back to its normal size, normal orientation. But yeah, let's create a radar dish while we're at it here. And we could also add in some markers and do all kinds of different stuff on this. But if we go into our sci-fi pack here, and we might be able to use some of the elements from the interior as well. But in our decorations, we have all kinds of cool little elements. So maybe if we use something like this, right? And all we have to do is we want to squash it. And this is what I would actually use to be like the base of it. You know, so it's kind of looking down on it. And then I would do like a little thing coming out of the middle and maybe a little base. So we could totally, if I wanted to make sure that I put this in, well, here we have our rocks, and yeah, we could probably do it in this particular one here. So yeah, let's build a little space, a little something right here. So I'm going to grab one of these, like a square element. Well, actually, let's grab this one, and I'll place it right here in the middle. And then I'm going to take a couple of other elements, maybe something. Well, I think we can go right to D. Do something like this. Whoops. And oh, actually, you know what we should do? We should do a point first. And I will let's make this. our little radar point that's sticking out. And then we'll switch to this one. Then we've created a little radar antenna. And you could do this multitude of different ways. You could actually use some of these round areas like in here. And if you wanted to, so this is where you start to do all of your transformations and whatnot. So just for simplicity's sake, let me drag something out here, right? So we have this. You'll notice that if I squash this down, I can kind of create it. Whoop, didn't want to move that. I can create this to feel like that it's at an angle. So if I wanted to do actually try to create a scenario along those lines, that I can totally do that. This is not going to work as well because of the round circle in the center. But if I were to take something like this to give it that feeling of perspective, I would just squash it down to whatever seems appropriate for what I was trying to create. And then I could build a little section in the middle and then kind of do it up from there. So all of these tools, I mean, you can definitely build anything that you wish inside of here. But that's a pretty good facsimile. All right, now I'm going to go all the way up, I think, we'll go into, which one's this? Okay, so this is going to be dirt over. And then we have this, which is all of our highlights and shadows. Whoops. Let's change that to that. And yep, top elements. I guess we'll do spaceship. Whoop. And there we have all of those different elements. And we can go into our winter art package now. And I'm going to grab in our effects. We have all these nice effects. Now let's do a couple of cracks and whatnot. Let's make sure we go back here. And here it might even make sense to keep it the kind of color that it is, right? And we can just kind of stamp it on there. And we could even do this on the ship itself if we wanted to create, like, we could drop down these, make them quite dark. Maybe drop down the opacity. And these could kind of look like where a blaster had shot them or something. But I'm going to grab this, I think. Or maybe this one. I think this is the one we used before. And just to get a head start, I'm going to grab like a color like this. And I'm going to increase the red here a bit. And we'll drop down its opacity. And I'm going to make a new painting layer for this. Just to kind of make it feel like it's been. There is no official release date of when lighting is going to come out. It is very close. There's just some tweaking that needs to be done before it goes to live. It is in test right now, and the latest test update has had quite a lot of improvements. So if you haven't tested it out, you should go check it out. We're always looking for more feedback, especially if you want to run a game, and if you run into issues, let us know so we can make sure we take care of it before it gets pushed to live. Oh yes, we're going to add some smoke in next, Play Games. And we can even add in some fire and whatnot. If we go into the Abyss pack, we can add in a whole bunch of different cool fire elements and whatnot. But yeah, we can jump up here and let's create a new effects layer. And we could go clouds probably. And add in a mask. And then we could start to draw out, maybe we're going to do smoke coming out of here. And we want to blur the edges of that. And I think we'll drop down the actual, we'll increase this. Or maybe we want the other way. And we probably want to slow this down. And then we'll just find something that's going to be appropriate here. The blurred edge has been shortened a little bit based off of some things, but we're going to be adjusting that as well, hopefully. But yeah, that's a nice little area there coming out. And then we can just play with these till we get something that seems to work pretty well. We can also go into, and let me show you a couple of different ways that you can kind of do this. Let's delete this effects layer. So it seems to be when I delete an effects layer, there seems to be a little bit of an issue. Oh, it looks as though that the mask has been added to the adjust layers color too. Let me just hide these. Let's try and let's do this one more time. I just want to check something really quickly here. Let's do this clouds layer once again. And let's add a mask. We can blur that little mask out a little bit. And then if we delete it, yeah, it seems to affect all of the other ones. So that's good to know. I'll see about, I'll send in a bug report for that. But here's another way that we could actually do the smoke and add in some nice little changes to it. So let's make a new painting layer actually and switch over. And what I'm actually going to do is go into the Abyss art pack and go into our, is it under effects? No, that's just fire. Under our decorations. And I'm going to type in smoke. We got all kinds of cool little smoke elements that we can use here. So I could grab something like this, for example. And maybe I will change the shape of this. So we have some bits of smoke kind of coming out of here. We might even want to do some other ones around. And I can always come back in and again adjust the opacity of this if I want. Bring it down. Maybe close them in here a little bit. And then I can create a new effects layer. This time I can actually use something along the lines of water or ocean. Something that's going to give this nice like rippling effect, because I can drop down the driplet part where we just have this a little bit of this undulating motion. And again, I can add a mask to this. I can then add it back into these areas. And I can change the intensity and whatnot. We could blur out those edges. And I could also do something similar with the ocean effect, where here I can actually change a lot of different parameters here. I find that the ocean effect works exceptionally well on things like fire and whatnot to give it that little animated kind of feel. So you can kind of give like little animation events to your images as well. But we could build these out even further. I might even drop these down a little bit further in their opacity. And so you can paint in all of these different images and whatnot. And so if I wanted to, I could also add in, if we wanted to come back up. Let's just clear this out in our effects area. And I could grab some of these like fire elements, for example. And again, a great way to do this is to drop down your opacity and just to build up these layers of and we can even increase our opacity probably to something like 75. And if you wanted to do like little fires all over the place, and we could even bring this all the way up to its maximum. Do some nice little fires along these edges and whatnot. And you'd want to make sure that you do all of this stuff outside of any sort of shadow content. And then we could actually, if we wanted to, then add in some lighting. So why don't we add in, and I'll do a couple more bits of smoke coming off of up here maybe, and we'll do like one other fire. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty good. Let's just add in some additional smoke. We'll use a different smoke image here. Maybe we'll do something like this. So we got some smoke coming off of our fire. Now let's add in some lighting to this environment. We got just about a half an hour left. So if you guys have any questions, please throw it into chat. I'm more than happy to try and answer. And we'll add in some lighting now to the environment. We can probably do, let's do ambient lighting here. Let's just turn that all the way up to white. Let's turn our lighting on, actually. Boom, we've just lit our scene. We have it all lit up here. I'm actually going to drop it down. Let's make it a little bit blue too. We'll make it like a nighttime scene, and then we'll add in lights for our ship. So here we have this nice scene. It's at night, and then we can grab our lights here. Probably just use like a preset. So we could probably go to like torch, or maybe even candle. Yeah, candle's a little bit more. I think we probably could make these a little bit more gradual here. Let's make a fall off on the outside a little bit more prevalent. And then when we come back in, you can see we have these nice little lit up areas here. And we could also come back in and make these a little bit more, our bright area a little bit more intense, a little bit larger. And we could also adjust our colors, maybe if we wanted it to be a little bit more orange. So we just drop down our green and blue. Those are probably a little bit too large, huh? So let's change their size here. I think that that's probably more appropriate. And if we were to drop down our ambient light source, right? If we go into our ambient light, and we were to drop it down even further, you'd get even a more of a drastic kind of involvement here. Well, let's see it as the players would see it. So here we have these nice little fires. And now we can actually start to adjust these colors in a little bit more of an appropriate way. Super cool. And now with our effects layer, we can actually see that we have this nice little rippling effects, kind of like possibly with the heat coming off of it. We can add in a little bit more up here as well. And we can even duplicate this layer and change it from ocean to water. So we can kind of get the best of both worlds here. And maybe we'll just drop down our intensity here a little bit. Yeah, very cool. All right, so Ryan James says from YouTube, been on a bit of a TTRPG hiatus. Trying to find out, it's been difficult to sync up schedules. So the vision, distance, and lighting effects are in the test channel. So it's totally open to the public. You're more than welcome to try and test it out and give us your feedback. It's not been released in the live client yet. We're just working on a couple of minor bugs for performance, but it's complete. I use it every single week in my own game, and it's working exceptionally well. So you should definitely check it out if you are interested in it. And if you run into any bugs, just let us know so that we can get it all taken care of before it gets pushed to live. Yeah, you bet. No problem at all. So do you guys have any questions? Is there anything that you would like me to demonstrate or show? We have about 30 minutes left, and we're pretty much done with this part of the creation process. And then next week, what we'll do is we'll actually build the inside of the spaceship and do it all in that side of manner. Maybe we'll actually use some of these spaceship parts to build like a uh, like an actual in-house maybe a land vehicle, because there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that as well. Oh, hey, Marbanya. How's it going? And again, we can always come back in and just turn off our lighting and see it in any way we wish. Excellent. Yeah, shuttlecraft. We could totally do that too. Yeah. Yeah, we'll build a couple of other vehicles. I'll show you guys. We'll go through some steps, and we'll take exactly the same kind of scenario. Let me actually just call this like crash. Let's say, or maybe I'll be more specific and call it crashed spaceship. Otherwise, I will not know exactly what was going on. Oh yeah, we could do some flashing emergency lights. That's right, Doug. Yeah, so we had kind of touched on that last time too, and we could probably put one on the outside, which sounds pretty fun. So what we'll do is we could either do pulse or flash, and then we'll make it maybe something along these lines. Maybe we'll put it on the tip of the wing. And I think what we'll do is we'll just change it all of its. Oh well, we have to go in here and select it, and then we can just change its fall off. Maybe we'll make it very blue. Maybe we'll make it red. That should show up pretty well, huh? I guess we'll go back to its original kind of bluish color here. Oh yeah, green for starboard, red for port. That's right. That's for sailing vessels. Yeah, there's something on the wing. Oh, thanks so much, Play Games Patty. It was a lot of work, but it was super fun to do. Yep, red right return. Hopefully, we'll be able to release a lot more sci-fi packs in the future, as well as lots of other things. I want to do modern day stuff, more Call of Cthulhu things for like Victorian era and so on. All right, guys. Well, if there's no questions or if there's nothing else that you guys want me to demonstrate, I guess we'll end it a little bit early today. And like I said, what we'll do on this next Saturday is we'll build the entire interior of this ship as well. And we'll do some other vehicles. I'll show you guys how you can use this spaceship pack and you can build some like ground vehicles, and maybe we'll do like a little escape pod and stuff. and then we will continue on our journey. So we'll do last call for questions. Anyone have anything that they want any further explanation on or any demonstrations on? And like I always do, I'll put in my email address. If you guys have any questions or if you run into a problem, feel free to reach out. If there is something that you'd like me to cover on the stream, feel free to let me know. And if there is anything that, like perhaps there is an art package or something along those lines on the store that you're interested in, I'm more than happy to demonstrate it and show off what might be in there for you guys. So yeah, anything along those lines. Ooh, random flickering lights. There's nothing in the works right now. Nope. Oh yeah, that would be kind of cool, like for those kind of environments. Definitely would. And that kind of random flickering. Well, you know what you can do? You can actually kind of do that now by layering a couple of different lights with different intervals. So why don't we just discuss that really quickly here? Because I actually did that in something recently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this just to white. And for these purposes, I'm going to drop down this to be quite dark so that we can kind of see. And we're going to do it in the flash. And I'm just going to make this, we'll make this a little bit bigger so that we can kind of see it. And I'll make sure that I put it on the map. So here we have like this flickering light, but it will go in different increments. And then so what I can do is I can make another one and put it right in the same spot, and we'll get a random kind of flickering because they're at different speeds, and it makes it really difficult to kind of anticipate where they were going to go. So by adjusting these two different lights, right? So I have this one that is at 42, and then I have this one that is at 100. So maybe if I make this one 24, and you can do this with a couple of different lights. So you can make it really feel like it's random in the amount of brightness it is, and you can create some really kind of random kind of flickering. Yeah, the pilot left his turn signal on. And you could even layer in a couple of more of these, right? So we could just, and then you'll have this random amount and change these as much as you, and then we could even add in a pulse. And so just by playing with all of the different parameters, and I would change actually if I were to do this, you'd want these to be different sizes as well. And so if we were to jump over to that one, and then maybe we'll make this one 3, 1. So yeah. Yep, different opacity too. Exactly right. Yeah, so we could drop one down. And then once I had everything all squared away, I would just stack them all up. So your light would have this like flickering. It would take a little bit of manipulating, but you could totally do it. No problem. And I would change the fall offs and do all kinds of different stuff. Yep, you could totally do a lighthouse light. Thanks, Doug. So yeah, tons and tons of stuff that you can do, and I'll even show you guys. We could do like a lighthouse sometime, and I can show you guys how you can actually set up. We don't have any directional kind of lights right now, But let me just take this one and I'll move it over here, and we'll put its flicker to none, and I'll make it quite a bit bigger. All right, so we have this large light here, and I'm just going to grab these and delete them. So here we have this light, and if you wanted to create like a directional light, like that would be from a lighthouse, you can actually use your occluders to do this like a shadow caster. And then you can actually set it up so that you have and let me just see where it is located. Yeah. Let me just connect these. So you can totally create these like very directional kind of lights, especially if it's coming from a particular other area. So if we were to have this, imagine this coming from the top of a lighthouse, you can actually have these really cool kind of, you can actually use this to control your light flow. And the great thing about these is that they have they only are there to control your light. They don't actually do anything else. They don't block any movement or sight or vision or anything along those lines. So it is definitely great to be able to use these in that kind of manner. I'm just going to come back in here and readjust these really quick. Bring this back up to a reasonable level. And then we can kind of turn this stuff off for the moment. Oh, awesome, Andrew. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's definitely come a long way. The graphics that we can do inside of here, you know, the image creation is just phenomenal. Um, with all of our effects layers and all of the image creation systems that have been set up now with the new lighting and whatnot, it's just I think it's just tremendous. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me this afternoon. I always look forward to my Saturday afternoons and doing this stream. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I put my email in chat if you guys run into any problems or if there's anything that you need help with, please let me know. At least on the image side of things, I'm not really super adequate at handling any other problems, but if there is anything that you want to see me cover on the stream, please let me know. If there is any sort of art that you feel like is missing from an art package or you'd like to see added, let me know. Any sort of products you'd like to see in the future, let me know. Super interested in what you guys would like to see or what would you use. I want to make the packs that you guys want to use. So I thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys next time.